This was Regardie's second edition of the Golden Dawn, an account of the teachings, rites, and ceremonies, published 1969. The first version was released 1937. It starts with a dedication. To all true seekers of the light. May what they find herein sustain them in their search for the quintessence, the stone of the philosophers, true wisdom and perfect happiness, the summum bonum. Regardie's 1969 intro to this second edition started with him reflecting on the impact that his release of Inner Secrets had since the publication of the first edition in the later 1930s. It was mostly praised, but ridiculed in a few cases. Regardie wanted to preserve the body of knowledge that he felt was endangered and had no regrets other than an uncertainty towards how effective his efforts were. Namely, he was concerned with the overwhelming sheer weight and the wealth of material contained, especially in the absence of an in-person teacher. In response, he implores the seeker to take small bites and find their own optimal method of absorption. He asks the student to meditate on certain key points to understand the work suggested by the order. Take this for instance. By names and images are all powers awakened and reawakened. To this point, the portal document, found towards the end of Volume 1, is of critical importance to the student and should be studied above all else. It deals with the building of the Tree of Life in the aura, and is one of the most practical of all the Golden Dawn curriculum. This, along with the LBRP, offer the student the basics for which all other rituals and ceremonial procedures should be conducted. It's like the magical scaffolding which opens up the door, or portal, for further progress. He suggests that the practitioner then understand and experiment with the Rosy Cross ritual. This system is something that is to be worked over time, so study the meditations and rituals while familiarizing yourself with the Western esoteric philosophy in general before attempting to visualize yourself a part of the self-initiatory sequences. Speaking of getting your bearings, Regardie in this 1969 intro suggests some accompanying material. Understand these basics: anatomy, psychology, astronomy, alchemy, geomancy, tarot, language, and semantics. He says, books like these are excellent additions to the basic requisites of a sound occult library, or, in this day and age, you could watch videos as an alternative. The basic theory of the order system was to identify various spiritual principles existing in the universe through a series of ceremonial grades. One of the most important backgrounds of the system is the scheme of the Kabbalah. While Kabbalah is multifaceted, its most important root concept is the ultimate root from which this universe, and all things in it, has evolved, is Ein Sof Or, which is a Hebrew term for infinite or limitless light. It is an infinite ocean of light. Everything came from there, and in this abstract matrix all life must return. Keep in mind, these are divine principles. Issuing from this boundless light is the Tree of Life, which contains 10 abstract numerations or sephirot, which branch out as different degrees of one common substance principle. If I may put it in my own words, picture an ocean of light. Flip it upside down. The first uppermost sphere on this tree induces the light. Here, the light is the most ethereal. As the light trickles down through the spheres, it becomes more dense, until it makes it to the lowest sphere, making up what we know as concrete matter. This is the Tree of Life, and it contains many mysteries to be held, like the nature of polarity, the secrets of the supernals, and in that it could be applied as a fractal, the idea of the macrocosm-microcosm. This glyph serves as a multi-purpose tool, multidimensional, not only explaining the constructs of the universe, or that which is without, but also a map of the human being with our degrees of consciousness, or that which is within. Thus, Kether is in Malkuth, as the famous axiom says. The supernals, though highly impersonal in itself, are to all intents and purposes what is commonly thought of as God. Concerning this metaphysical ladder comprised of 10 sephirot, Regardie says, it may be convenient for the reader if I tabulate the names of the sephirot, with the grades employed in the Golden Dawn, together with a few important attributions. If you're familiar with my first video on Israel Regardie's The Golden Dawn, you'll know that we went over the topic of initiation. But I found in this version, it was worded in a different way, there were more details, and I came out with a different understanding on what it means for one to be initiated. Once again, the root word of initiation means to begin, to commence anew. Regardie says, initiation is thus the beginning of a new phase or new attitude to life, the entry, moreover, into an entirely new type of existence. Its characteristic is the opening of the mind to an awareness of the other levels of consciousness, both within and without. Initiation means, above all, spiritual growth, a definite mark in the span of human life. The Golden Dawn believes that the best way to bring about that change is the ceremonial technique. This had me imagining the evolution of ceremony through time, from shamanism to the ancient mystery schools to groups who committed the teachings to writing. For example, certain 3rd to 4th century Neoplatonists taught their theurgy a magical concept of initiation which aims to purify the personality so the imprisoned could spring up into open manifestation. These Neoplatonists may have influenced other groups moving on, from the medieval magical traditions to the sacraments of Christianity. Regardie states, the entire object of all magical and alchemical processes is the purification of the natural man, and by working upon his nature to extract the pure gold of spiritual attainment. This is initiation. Before all things are the chaos, the darkness, and the gates of the land of night. As one Golden Dawn ritual reads, Child of earth, long hast thou dwelt in darkness. Quit the night and seek the day. Regardie elaborates, in the Buddhist scheme, the first noble truth is sorrow, and not until we understand life as sorrow can we break away from the dread ravage. If one idea more than any other is persistently stressed from the beginning, it is in the word light. Being brought to the light is the whole meaning of initiation. Regardie describes the process. While man is assumed into the Godhead, and the divine spirit is brought down into manhood, a new heaven and a new earth make their appearance, and familiar objects take on a new divine radiance, as though illuminated by an eternal spiritual light. And this is what was meant by the old alchemists. For finding the philosopher's stone converts all base metals into the purest gold. They saw matter in its initial state as impure. They didn't want to completely reject it, but like the Neoplatonists, work with it by refining or transmuting it. One Neoplatonist, Salos, stated the purpose of initiatory magic as to initiate or perfect the human soul by powers of materials here on earth. For the supreme faculty of the soul can by its own guidance aspire to the sublimest intuition and to the comprehension of deity. Regardie calls it the rapture of the inner personality, its reaction to the world, when it is freed by the mystical experience from all entanglements. He goes on to state that magic does not demand a retreat from life, but a transcendence from its intrinsic turmoil, and it was his belief that the great work was not just for selfish gain but to benefit others. I remember a line from Ouspensky, quoting Gurdjieff as, once you're awake, you can then awaken your neighbor. In the words of Dr. Carl Jung, magical practices are projection of psychic events, which exert a counter-influence on the soul, and act as a kind of enchantment on one's own personality. Regardie says, from one point of view, the officers of the rituals represent just such psychic projections. The K-Rux is an officer who personifies the reason faculties. He represents that intelligent, active part of the mind, which functions in obedience to the will. The Hengemon personifies the higher part of the mind and is this part that seeks the rising of the light. This represents the aspiring, sensitive, and intuitive consciousness. The Hierophant personifies the divine self. This part, which people rarely become aware of, acts on behalf of the higher spiritual soul. He is seated in the place of the rising sun, the east, and rarely leaves this spot. The cherubim is the officer or the part of the psyche which protects this higher self. He stands at the gate with a flaming sword, keeping out the chaos of the night. The various groupings of the officers and their movements in the temple are not without profound meaning. Remember, the entire goal of theurgy is to bring down the divine into that which is temporarily cut off. Simply put, the great work is a quest for the light. Even upon the altar of the temple are the symbols indicating the charging of light. A red cavalry cross, with 6 squares, as symbolic of harmony and equilibrium, is placed above a white triangle, the emblem of the Golden Dawn. The place of the cross above the triangle does not suggest the domination of the sacred spirit, but its equilibrium and harmony in the heart of man. The objective of the sacred rites is the gradual purification of the soul in a systematic way. It starts with the neophyte grade, which is concerned with refining the personality by restoring the candidate to balanced power between the 2 pillars. For it is said, "Unpurified and unconsecrated, thou canst not enter the sacred hall." The neophyte ritual stands by itself and is an introductory ceremony shadowing forth all the major formula and techniques. Both the neophyte and Adeptus Minor rituals are almost entirely concerned with the light itself. The other 5 grades that take place between them serve to awaken the elemental bases needed to approach lofty realities. The ceremony of each grade, given in its symbolic form and pageantry, calls forth the spirit or power of each element. And just as steel placed in close proximity of a magnet receives some of that magnetism, so the presence of power induces power. Contact with the appropriate type of elemental force produces an identical type of manifestation within the sphere of the neophyte. The neophyte's way is a path between severity and mercy, the middle way, up towards the higher genius. The personality must be harmonized, and every element along the way must be balanced to accomplish the great work. Therefore, the 4 grades of earth, air, water, and fire plant the seeds of the microcosmic pentagram, and above them is placed, in the portal ceremony, the crown of the spirit, the quintessence, added so that individual elemental forces may be tempered to the end that all may work together in balanced disposition. Once again, each grade of the Golden Dawn initiation corresponds with a sephira on the Tree of Life. Regardie advises the student to study the rituals, reflect on the passages there within, and meditate on the corresponding prayers given by the Hierophant at the end of each grade. These prayers voice the inherent aspiration of the elements towards the goal they are striving to reach. For here they are conceived as blind dumb forces, both within and without the personal sphere of man. Zelator is the first elemental grade, representing Earth or Malkuth, and is best summed up by this passage. And the Tetragrammaton placed the cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the path of the Tree of Life. For he has created nature, that man, being cast out of Eden, may not fall into the void. He has bound man with the stars as with a chain. He allures him with scattered fragments of the divine body, in bird and beast and flower. And he laments over him in the wind, and in the sea, and in the birds. And when the times are ended, he will call the cherubim from the east of the garden, and all shall be consumed and become infinite and holy. The second elemental grade is Theoricus. It is referred to the 9th Sephirah, Yesod, the foundation, and to it are attributed the sphere of operation of Luna and the element of air. Here the candidate is conducted to the stations of the 4 cherubim, the angelic choir of Yesod. It is always through the power and symbol of the cherubim that the elemental spirits are invoked. In each of these grades, several drawings and diagrams are exhibited, with each one conveying useful knowledge and information required to the upward quest. The tarot keys are also displayed, which depict the journey of the soul. The third elemental grade is Practicus. It is referred to the 8th Sephirah, Hod, the splendor, the lowest Sephirah on the pillar of severity. To it are attributed the sphere of the operation of Mercury and the element of water. Looking at the tree of life, two paths lead up towards Hod, and they are the path of fire from Malkut and the path of the reflection of the sun from Yesod. The fourth elemental grade is Philosophus. It is referred to the seventh Sephirah, Netzach, meaning victory, and to it are attributed the sphere of the operation of Venus and the element of fire. Looking at the tree of life, two paths lead up towards Netzach, which are principally of a watery nature. Thus the forces encountered are of an identical nature with those of the previous grade, except their order and power is reversed. In this grade, the fire rages with the water only as a complementary force whereon it may manifest and find balance. Water is germinative and maternal, while fire is fructifying and paternal, and it is from their interior stimulated union that the higher life is born, for it is written, "Except a man be born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God." The path of Pe signifies this balance that leads to the transmutation from the dark chaos to light.